Ms. Hong Lin, aka Elena Lin. Is she the red thread across Buy2Sell, LLMH, and beyond? Hi everyone. Following my previous videos, I want to share a further development in the situation involving Buy2Sell and the wider network that appears around them. What I am about to say is not speculation dressed up as certainty. It is based on documents in our possession, public corporate records, website analysis, and the visible public footprint of multiple connected business entities. At the beginning, this looked like a single commercial dispute. Now, after further review, the concern is broader. Because the issue no longer appears limited to one company name or one contact point. The public record points to a wider cross-border ecosystem of entities, websites, and business narratives with recurring references to the same individual, Ms. Hong Lin, also referred to publicly in some places as Elena Lin. One hard public data point is this. In Florida, Miasia Group LLC is listed as an active company, and the public filing names Hong Lin as its authorized member. That matters because it is not just branding language, it is a formal public corporate record tied to a real entity in the United States. At the same time, the Miasia Group website presents a business active across Singapore, the United States, and Vietnam, describing itself as a leader in distribution, exhibitions, technology, brand development, and property investment. And that is where the pattern becomes more interesting. Because when you compare the public-facing sites of LLMH Group and Miasia Group, the overlap is striking. In other words, these do not look like unrelated companies that simply happen to operate in similar sectors. They appear to be built from the same presentation template and then selectively adapted to support different corporate or geographic narratives. That does not by itself prove misconduct, but it does suggest a coordinated public-facing structure. And the more closely that structure is inspected, the more it raises questions about accountability. For example, the LLMH Group website is live and publicly accessible, but its contact page shows only a generic form-style interface with no visible working email address in the page text and no meaningful named contact point. In our own attempt to make contact, the previously identified corporate email was no longer valid, and the site contact route was not operational. So the issue is not only what these sites claim. It is whether they function as real business interfaces when someone actually tries to reach a responsible person, and that question extends beyond LLMH. What emerges is a wider credibility ecosystem. Different company names, different websites, different jurisdictions, but overlapping narratives around market entry, distribution, branding, events, and expansion in Asia. There is also a reputation management layer around that ecosystem. Again, the point is not that every one of these assets is false. The point is that the public-facing layer appears highly optimized for perceived credibility, while in several instances the practical route to accountability is weak, generic, or ineffective. And that is why this can no longer be reduced to one delayed purchase order, one failed reimbursement, or one isolated dispute. The concern now is broader: a recurring pattern, a repeated cross-border presentation structure, and a business-facing ecosystem that, when tested, may function more effectively as a legitimacy signaling layer than as a transparent and accountable operating interface. There is one more point that matters. The record also shows that this process was not confined to anonymous emails or junior-level intermediaries. At a relevant stage of the engagement, a senior LLMH representative, Mr. Joseph Nguyen, Group President of LLMH, was introduced into the process. That does not by itself determine responsibility, but it does show that the matter had visibility beyond a purely marginal or low-level interaction. So where does that leave things now? It leaves us with a documented dispute, a broader public footprint, recurring names and entities across multiple jurisdictions, formal corporate traces in the United States, substantial overlap in website structure and messaging, and growing reason to question whether this was ever just a simple commercial misunderstanding. The main question remains open. Buy2Sell and its ecosystem: a deliberate bad faith conduct or a systemic fraud scheme? At this stage, What is documented in our case, when viewed alongside this wider public footprint, raises legitimate concern that the issue may be systemic rather than incidental. This is not escalation for its own sake. This is documentation. This is transparency. And this is exactly what accountability starts to look like when private silence is replaced by public record. Thank you. Stay tuned.